So, I've played 7 Days to Die for a little bit now, and I figured that, you know, I might want to do a tier list for this game as well. And I figured, like, the best thing to sort of go over would be, like, the perks. Now, fortunately, there's already basically a tier list, basically for, like, this purpose, that's basically made for, like, version 1.0, so we basically have, like, all this stuff, like, right here to sort of, like, work with. It was made by an Eric Roseberry, and he also has, like, his own, like, thing here as well, so it's basically his, like, sort of ranking, basically however he basically is here. But whatever. I figured that, like, it might be a good idea to sort of, like, jump into this and, like, give my own take, basically, on, like, how I basically rank these, like, skills and such. Note, by the way, I have, like, sort of made, like, use, like, the same sort of ranking I usually do for all my stuff, so fantastic, excellent, laudable, mediocre, deficient, and terrible. He has, like, 7, but, the only thing that's being dropped is basically the E. So, really, if it's basically an E, it's an F, so that's how I basically see it. To help myself out, I basically have, like, the perks page basically open here. And the whole purpose of this will just be sort of like, look at the icons here and figure out where they basically are. This first one I think is basically for strength, so there's heavy armor. So let's get to that. So, specialize in shielding yourself with iron and steel, becoming an unstoppable behemoth on the battlefield. And I gotta open this up quickly for you guys to see it. So, this is a survival perk governing the strength attribute. Basically, for each level, you basically get, like, decreased, like, armor, movement, and stamina penalties. And you basically reduce the durability used when you basically get hit by stuff. I'll note the main idea for, like, these, like, perks is that they basically, like, make you a little bit faster and, like, capable of, like, doing more, which is pretty important if, like, you have, like, heavy armor. You don't want to basically run out of exhaustion with zombies and such, because that's really killer. So I consider this to be a fairly important stat if you're basically going to use, like, heavy armor. I don't consider it to be, like, the most important thing to basically get. Like, it's something to basically get a little bit later, but, it's still pretty important to sort of get. So let's just throw this basically into laudable, and that'll be our first laudable pick of the day. The next one looks to be in Constitution, so that would be... Where's Constitution? There's Fortitude. Machine Gunner. Alright, so Machine Gunner basically governs, like, the AK, the Bren, the pipe machine gun. And I'll note that in this game, machine guns are probably, like, overtuned for, like, how powerful they basically are. They use a lot of bullets, yes, but at the same time, they basically, like, will just, like, get you out of a jam so easily. And later on, basically against, like, Horde Knight and stuff like that, you're, maybe destroying enemies, like, real quickly anyway, so it works really great right there. The thing about, like, the machine gunner trait basically here, being in Constitution, that's, like, its only real downside, I think, basically, because, like, if basically expecting, like, Constitution, you're basically going to be stuck with, like, the fist, which I consider to be, like, one of the weaker weapons in this game, but it's not, like, too terrible and consider, like, all the other stuff you're getting from this, like, attribute. So, machine gunners, these are definitely an excellent weapon. I feel it's really excellent right there, and that's just where it's going to go. Alright, the next one looks to be, like, one of the currency ones, so that's probably Intellect. So, better barter. Okay, so, better barter basically makes it so you get, like, more dukes basically from traders when you basically, like, sell them stuff. And at the same time, you also basically will be able to, like, get a discount when you're basically buying stuff from them as well. This can be very important basically later on if you're basically doing a lot of, like, buying and selling with them, but I find for myself, I don't really use, like, the traders that much, so it's, like, a little bit lesser for that purpose for me. If it did more than, like, given the amount of, like, bang for a buck you basically sort of got for your dukes, then, I might care about it more, but as it is right now, it's basically sort of, like, deficient or mediocre, that's the thing. I'd say it's probably deficient, because it's not really doing enough. It's not, like, totally terrible, but, it could be doing more. Alright, the next one looks to be Agility 1, Archery. Alright, so, Archery. I like bows in this game, sort of. They're basically very realistic, but at the same time, that also makes them a little bit, like, less useful to sort of use. You basically get, like, more damage and faster aim, and you can basically draw and, like, reload bows basically faster with, like, more, like, levels. But I have to sort of wonder, like, how basically useful these basically are. In my mind, Archery is basically something that's sort of like, you don't really do, like, basically in combat so much. You basically do it sort of more or less out of combat, and it's basically for like, you know, stealth kills and such like that. And you can do a lot with basically like archery, sort of like, you know, to get stealth kills, but it's like sort of like, you know, a little bit lesser as a result of that. So it comes off being like a very mediocre, like, you know, trick to me. So we're just gonna throw archery into like mediocre because it's not like, you know, you don't get like some bang for like extra damage against like, you know, stealth kills because you instantly kill stuff perhaps a little bit more. But at the same time, if you're basically going for stealth kills, then you probably want to get like, you know, one of the stealth, you know, traits basically in here for it. Alright, that looks like a brawling, so let's go back over to Constitution, or Fortitude. I keep calling it, you know, Constitution, but it's Fortitude. Brawler. So, I don't really think much of Brawler, by the way. It does have the, you know, advantage of being able to sort of like, you know, knock out like the teeth of the zombies, basically to sort of like, you know, punch them. But at the same time, this is basically one of these things where, you know, you're basically like using your fist basically to sort of beat up things. And even though it's got a very fast attack, you have to get very close to basically do it. And it's a little bit too close for comfort for my like sort of purposes. I do like the fact that you stagger like, you know, points a lot easier, like power attacks and stuff like that. And there's like a lot of like, you know, nice stuff in like sort of like the Furious Fist, like, you know, or Brawler like perk books here. Basically, these ones right here will basically give you a lot of stuff, like, you know, more damage to fists, sprinting powers can knock down opponents and stuff like that. And there's some really nice stuff basically to sort of get. But the thing about like, you know, the fist is that if you're so damn close to the enemies that like, you know, unless you're like, you really like, you know, not surrounded or like, you know, able to sort of handle your situation, it's like a really like, you know, weak sort of like, you know, combat style, like using Brawler. What's to say about? I don't want to say it's basically like, you know, mediocre because I consider it to be like, you know, not like the worst like, you know, sort of like, you know, attack based in this game, but uh it kind of is. So I'm gonna throw basically that right, you know, right there mediocre because that's basically how I sort of ground like, you know, bar brawling. All right, the next one looks to be right down here, Rule 1 Cardio. Now, this is a pretty good, like, you know, ability right here because it basically helps you conserve your stamina. Essentially, like, you know, with this recovery perk, whenever you're basically sprinting, it basically lets you, like, recover your, like, stamina and allows you to basically have longer sprint time. So, basically run, like, you know, more and such. So, another basically thing about this, like, you know, this trait is that it's basically only got, like, you know, 3, like, levels here, which is basically nice for, like, you know, a quick, like, you know, stamina regenerating, like, perk. And even though you only get, like, 3%, even if it's like 1 point, like 10%, that's still pretty good. So it's definitely like a really good perk to sort of have like early game. I wouldn't say it's like the best perk to sort of get, but I mean, I like to sort of sprint around a lot anyway, so it's probably for in my mind like a really good trait for that purpose. So we're gonna basically throw cardio right there. All right, then now the next one down here is Charismatic Nature. Now, I never actually used Charismatic Nature, and that's because this is basically a cooperative, like, only sort of like perk. You don't actually benefit from like this, like, you know, perk yourself when you basically have it on. Only your like, team members basically do. And it would be nice basically if like, you know, it sort of like was more helpful to like your partners and stuff like that, but I have to sort of like wonder basically like, you know, how really useful basically it really could be. Like getting like, you know, more like health regeneration, that's like, you know, this like usually like, you know, medical supplies for it. More block damage and melee damage, that's like, you know, okay, but only if your friend basically is like using like, you know, melee and stuff like that. There's stuff like, you know, less damage, that is useful. Definitely on Horde Knight. Find better loot and then find better loot plus a tribute. It's like these are all okay abilities, but it feels like, you know, this is like a very lacking sort of stat, and it requires a lot of intellect basically to sort of get as well. So, Charismatic Nature, I'm not going to say it's terrible, but it's one of these, like, you know, more deficient ones again. So, let's just throw in deficient as, like, leave right there, I think. Alright, the next one's going to be, the clubbing one, I think. Pummel Pete. So, Pummel Pete is basically one for clubs. And it's actually the weapon I basically recommend to my friend because, clubs basically let you, like, sort of, like, power, like, you know, knock down enemies a lot more, and, like, stun and stuff like that. And if you basically get like, you know, the batter up perk books like this. So your batter up. Batter up is basically like, you know, sprinting will basically like, you know, use less stamina, power attacks to delays will slow enemies. There's basically a lot of like, you know, really like nice deep buffs with clubs they can actually sort of make use of to sort of like, bring enemies basically sort of down. Power attacks to kill your enemy, refill your stamina meter. That's just like really nice. So you can just like keep on clubbing if you want to. Now, for most part, I consider clubs to be sort of like the newbie weapon in this game. They aren't like, a terrible weapon for like, experienced players to use, but they're basically like, more specialized for like newbies to sort of use, I think, because it gives them like all those like debuffs to sort of like handle zombies and stuff like that. And they pair well with like, like spears and like other stuff that are basically also sort of newbie weapons. They're really a weapon that like, you can really basically enjoy if like, you're a newbie. I think a lot of foodies basically into excellent because they like they pair really well in co-op. They're very good like for keeping yourself alive because you basically knock down enemies and like sort of like reduce the numbers and sort of manage them a little bit better. All right, Master Chef I think is the next one. So that's right here in strength anyway. So Master Chef. Now I have sort of like mixed opinions on Master Chef. I'm not basically the thing about like this like Master Chef is you think probably is a key thing about is like using like less recipes, so you basically like use less ingredients. But that's not really the main like attribute that basically makes the Master Chef very, very attractive to sort of like get. The thing about like, Master Chef is you basically get to like get your like reduced cook times, and basically like having reduced cook time of like 4% is like no joke so to speak. So just getting like a single point for like Master Chef means they basically have like 40% like less time basically sort of cook stuff. If you basically like check my like let's play, you'll see like I'm taking like say 10 minutes to sort of like cook some foods, 20 minutes to cook like batch like others. This will basically cut this down by like quite a few minutes. So basically, if you don't want to keep your fire on and sort of track your skewers, this is very good for that sort of purpose. You don't really need it for like finding cooking magazines. You basically find those fairly easily enough. And food itself is like not the hardest to manage. But I mean, if you want to do any sort of cooking, then like it's important for that sort of purpose. So I'm not gonna say like it's a terrible skill, but I'll throw this roll right there in mediocre because it's basically like sort of like in the middle of the pack, so to speak. This one right here. All right, the next one is an intellect perked. It's advanced engineering. Now, it's probably going to be at some point in this game, unless you're playing with like cooperatively with other people, and even then, you're probably going to be doing a little bit of crafting in this game. And the whole idea of like advanced engineering is that you basically get to like craft a little bit better on like the forge, workbenches, cement mixers, and stuff like that. Now, I'll note the thing about like the layer parts of like this skill. It also lets you get like cost less, make you forge steel, and like make your electro devices like basically less. In many ways, this is what I see as like being sort of like a late term sort of skill to sort of get because you'll basically want to be like you're crafting later in the game, and this is like one of these like skills that basically like really benefits from like putting more levels in intellects or in not basically so it gets to a point. But it's like a really like powerful skill because if I had this basically over say like the other one right here, Grease Monkey, I would have been able to like sort of craft like those like parts basically of like for steel a lot cheaper. So it's a very like effective and like powerful like skill to basically get this in the late game. Early game is basically useful for like getting like the crafting magazines, but you can sort of get this from lockpicking if you want. So it's a late term skill that basically I can like sort of put my like my stamp of approval on, I guess we'll say. I'm gonna throw it basically excellent because like it's an excellent skill. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it does its job good enough. Okay, so next one to look at is going to be Electrocutioner. Learn how to use stun batons more effectively. So this basically governs both stun batons and pipe batons, and the whole idea of like the batons in this game is they basically sort of like use it to sort of like knock down enemies a lot easier than even a club. And if you get like the stun batons, you can basically electrify them, so basically like get stunned basically for like a little while. Now compared to like other like stuff you could be using, like say the club and stuff like that, it's not as damaging to like stun batons or like the pipe baton, but the ability to sort of like stun and like knock down enemies a lot is like super powerful. And if you basically like Tech Junkie here, for example, then let's just look at this right here. You can basically get like stun baton charging, some repulsor mods. There's like other stuff that basically like makes it degrade slower. Now, this is basically one of these skills that basically sort of like, stands out in like multiplayer, I think, because you can basically sort of like, stun a whole lot of zombies for your like your friends to sort of like deal with, while you're basically like running around like, this like sort of like, feeding a horde. But it's basically one of these skills that like, it's basically more like, it compounds like other abilities you basically might have. So if you have like, turrets, then you can use these to sort of like, keep the enemies basically off you while your turrets basically deal them. And that's not really my style in this game. I don't really think of it as like, a divestment eater, so they're laudable for what they basically do, but they sort of come off as being a little bit mediocre as a thing some of the time. So I think I was going to throw them down there of like bar brawling, and that's going to be basically what they are. Alright, so that looks like an explosive, so I think that's probably in the intellect tree, or perception tree. And Demolition Expert. I have no idea why it's basically flipped around, but that's definitely Demolition Expert up here. Alright, specialized in explosive weapons to stun, cripple, dismember your foes. Now, I really stay away from like, explosive like weapons, but they're actually very, very powerful. You sort of like use them. The whole idea of like, explosives, they can sort of like take out like a horde of like enemies all at once, or like, at least sort of like hinder them from like being able to do stuff. Imagine basically if you like run into a room, there's basically a bunch of like sleeping zombies, you throw like, a grenade on their head and basically all gets, exploded, so to speak. That's basically the sort of like advantage of like, the explosive. If you basically have like a group of enemies like all around, you can like, just take them all at once. On Horde Knights, this is basically a very powerful weapon, but it's basically one of these weapons that like, do I really think like you're gonna benefit a lot from it? Is a thing. And the answer is like there's probably like better things to sort of perk basically into, so it's basically like another one of these like, sort of mediocre abilities, I think, or even deficient. Unless there's anything else it basically does. I don't think there's anything else it basically does besides like, more damage, faster reload speed, faster chance. Yeah, it's basically like one of these skills I think like, I probably throw it down here deficient because the thing about explosives in this game is that they can also harm you as well, so that's basically why I don't like using them. And there's like basically always like ways for sort of like the fail basically if you're not careful, so they're useful, but you don't need a skill base to sort of make them useful as a thing, and at the same time, like, there's also a penalty of like, hurting yourself, so yeah. Okay, next one is going to be living off the land. So that's basically over here in Fortitude. Now, I'm no farmer in this game, but my friend actually picked this up. And the whole purpose of like living off the land is that basically lets you like, craft like farm plots for cheaper. And it also lets you basically like, get better harvest basically from like, your like, crops and stuff. I believe there's also a chance that basically they get like, extra seeds basically back. So there's that too. You basically get like more seeds. So if you're going to do farming, then living off the land is pretty useful for our purpose. And, I can't really scoff at it being like what basically is. So, if you have the chance basically to sort of farm, then like, you can really benefit from it. So why not? Laudable. Alright, lightning hands. Pulverize your enemies with faster brawling strikes. I have no idea why they give you nunchucks for the symbols here, but this just makes your fist go faster. That's all there really is to say about it. I mean, if you need to get like, faster punches, then I guess it's useful. I mean, it means more damage basically to like sort of like, take stuff down. I'm gonna be like, kind of cheesy here. I'm gonna throw this basically above like, this skill here. This is basically sort of like, based on this like, thing right here. But the thing about like, faster strikes and like the other like, sort of faster things as well. So think like, big and fast, quick and perceptive. They basically like, are all important basically for like, essentially it's making your like, weapons just go faster. So yeah, they're laudable. All around. Alright, now, healing factor. Now, a lot of people like to say that they really like the idea of like being able to heal faster, but it comes at a cost of skill. It basically makes you hungrier and like, first you're faster as well. And that's not really basically sort of like, Node here as well. So, even though they're going to basically, heal from like critical injuries like twice as fast, you're going to basically like regenerate like, you say like 1 HP every 5 seconds at like, the full level here. The thing about healing factors that basically makes you hungrier and like, first you're faster, which can get very annoying. And at the same time, if you basically like use like a med pack or something like that instead to heal, then you'd be like fine anyway. So healing factor is basically one of these like skills that like it sounds good, but it's got some deficient qualities basically to it that make you not want to use it. So I'm gonna throw it down deficient because that's basically where it basically really belongs. He's got 2 archery things here apparently. Is that by mistake or something else? I wonder. Oh, I know what it basically is. The Huntsman. So if you look at agility and archery, it's basically got the same symbol. Okay, that's good to know. Alright, well, Huntsman. Huntsman basically makes it so you can basically harvest more like, resources from animals. And like, that means like more bones, animal fat, leather, stuff like that. I'll note by the way that I refer to Huntsman. I consider it to be like, sort of like a waste of like, a perk basis like spend because you don't really like want for food or anything like that. And leather and bone are fairly plentiful already, so you don't really need to have like the Huntsman to sort of like, work with. So this is gonna be our first like, sort of like terrible skill down here, I guess. And I can actually like do this to see like, yeah, this is Hunt. So if I check out archery right here, I bet it's gonna say bows. Yep. So there's our Huntsman. It's gonna go down here terrible. That's basically where it's gonna sit. All there is really to say about it. Alright, the next one is going to be blades. Deep cuts. Now, I'm running basically right around with my friend, basically my like, agility-based character. And he basically specialized in blades. And the whole idea of like this like skill right here, deep cuts, is that basically lets you like, bleed your opponents a little bit better. And, every attack will basically refresh that bleeding basically as well. Enemies are basically bleeding will basically move slower, so basically at Samurai, where I basically am right now, basically it's causing like, the enemies to move like, 20% slower while bleeding. I'll basically get like, more stamina back from my blows. There's basically like, glancing blows causing bleeding and stuff like that. There's some like, a lot of bleeding perks, basically this idea of like, this like talent. Now, in my opinion, deep cuts is basically a very interesting sort of like ability, but only in the sort of fact that basically you do like, a lot of damage with that bleeding. And really, like, with, like, a lot of these, like, weapon skills, you want to basically kill the enemies outright rather than, like, make them bleed, so to speak. So, I'm not really sure, like, how powerful this really is, basically, like, sort of higher difficulties and stuff like that. But, I mean, bleeding is useful, but, I mean, you have to basically hit all the zombies to sort of, like, make them all bleed, want to sort of, like, make them all bleed. So, on, like, the same zombie basically hitting over and over again, you're not going to get as much, like, value, I don't think, from, like, the bleeding and such. So, it's sort of like an F sort of weapon. I don't think it's bad as, like, say, like, the bar brawling thing, but at the same time, it kind of is actually worse than it, so... Yeah, we're just gonna throw that right there. I mean, I'll note this is, like, the most damaging weapon is a machete in this game, by the way, but... it's one of those things where, like, you really want to be that close to the enemy, so everything as well. The thing about both, like, fists and knives is that they're basically close-range weapons, so... Unless you basically want to get right up in the face of zombies, it's not basically like very ideal to ever use them. Alright, the next one's going to be down here in, Intellect, the Daring Adventurer. Now, a lot of people will basically like sort of like, fawn over how good this basically, like, skill basically is to get. But at the same time, I basically also have to wonder, like, that's how useful it really is. The whole idea of, like, the Daring Adventurer basically gets you, like, that increase of, like, the trader stake, so to speak. So basically you get, like, better items out of, like, your traders. But at the same time, unless you're actually like sort of like, really actively making use of your traders, it's not that useful. I will note that it's very nice to get this sort of like, Daring Adventure down here of like, double quest rewards, for example, but is it like the best thing to sort of get as a thing, right? I preferably would rather like, survive my encounters and like, basically like complete quests and basically get like the rewards for it, so it's laudable, but it's basically one of these, another one of these skills that's sort of like in the middle, so to speak. It's like near like good nor bad. So it's like, it does what it does. All right, there's only like, two armor like, traits in this game. There's one for like medium and one for like, heavy. So by process elimination, this is medium. All right, so this basically follows the sort of like same like sort of like mindset of like, heavy armor. The only problem like medium armor is basically in like the agility tree, by the way. And another thing about agility is that like, there's basically like a few good things like parkour in here, but I mean, whatever I basically like, invest in here, or basically invest in say in Fortune, which basically gives me all these nice ones over here. I say this because you basically have to sort of factor in like, what are skills you basically want to get with like, medium armor, for example. You basically invest basically in this sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, parkour is basically nice to get by the way, and you don't need to get like, too many levels of this. But I mean, yeah, it's basically one of the skills that like, it's good, but it suffers a little bit from like, the other skills that are basically with it. And that's like its like main like problem, I think. All right, lock picking. Lock picking is basically used to pick up unlocks, and I basically do this like all the time. Basically in my like playthroughs, or like I'll basically like find a lock safe or a lock like chest. I'll basically use lock picks to sort of open up. I use it on cop cars and other stuff as well. Now the key thing about like lock picks is that you basically get like both the crafting magazines for Forge Ahead, as well as like the Great Heist books. And if you're basically gonna go after Great Heist, you'll basically find like more like damage to saves. You'll like find more jewelry, more dukes, more like damage to land claim properties. I don't really care about it. The really good window is basically right here. Fall great distances. Basically, if you have 5,000 dukes or more, you can fall 50 meters without taking any damage. It's just awesome, basically, so to speak. Use those stamina while sprinting, sneak past motion detection devices, and you basically find more lockpicks, in like loot stuff like that, and you have less chance basically breaking lockpicks, maybe to use them. So another basically the thing about lockpicking is that you're probably not really picking it up for like the ability to sort of like pick locks, which is basically nice, but rather basically picking this up for like the books basically you get for most part is the idea. Still, how valuable do I basically say basically is, I guess. So I don't think basically it's like as strong as like say the workstation here, or even some of these other stuff here, but let's just throw it right there in laudable, because it's a laudable skill to sort of pick up this one. Alright, now, the grocery one. I can actually do this probably see where it is. Lucky. Lucky Looter. Right there. Now, a lot of people basically say like, Lucky Looter is a fairly like useless like sort of trait, because, the loot bonus isn't that really great for like this game. But that's not really a reason for like getting Lucky Looter. You're gonna get Lucky Looter for the ability to sort of like, open things faster. A big part of this game basically like is looting basically is based, so to speak. And the ability to sort of loot faster means you can sort of like, press on to do other stuff. So I can see like, the benefit of being able to like, cut down say like a 4-second like, opening like, thing into like, 0.8 seconds, for example. I don't think it's like the greatest skill to basically get, but I mean, it's sort of like up here like, during adventure, so this is for right there in level, and that's basically where it's gonna go. Alright, strength. Skull Crusher. Oh, Skull Crusher. Sledgehammers. They're basically one of the like, longer range weapons, and they basically are great for like, dealing with like multiple foes all at once. The only real downside to them is that they basically have like, a heavy stamina cost basically to them as well. But if you basically get access to like, tier 5 like, for Skull Crusher, killing blows grant you like free stamina basically back for like, using them. And the fact that you basically like, will just like, power through enemies, like, knocking down, powering an attack really easily is like, just awesome. I don't think there's basically any like, sort of like, perk books basically like, based off Skull Crusher, but these weapons alone are basically like great for like, sort of like, AoE control, so to speak, if you basically have them. Do I want to consider like, this to be a fantastic weapon? That's the thing. I'm going to say that probably they are pretty fantastic. I mean, this is basically not a newbie weapon, by the way, because if you don't manage that stamina basically correctly, you're going to be in trouble. But if you can basically land those hits like, bang, 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 and like, really like, spread around the pain and have your friends basically help you out where necessary, you can basically like excellently make use of like a sledgehammer, so like, bash down like some heads, so to speak. So I think that'll be our first like fantastic pick, so to speak. So Skull Crusher, fantastic. Alright, so I already mentioned Grease Monkey a little bit. I basically picked up Grease Monkey in my like, playthrough currently with my friend. And the whole idea of like Grease Monkey is that basically lets you like, get more access to like vehicle crafting magazines, cheaper parts and stuff like that. It's really one of these things that, like, you probably don't really need to worry too much about, like, Grease Monkey. It's a nice, like, ability to sort of get, like, easier crafting and stuff. But at the same time, it's not really, like, that hard to sort of make these things anyways without it. Especially if you get, like, advanced engineering. I was going to say that's when it's efficient because it's, like, it's nice not being able to sort of, like, have to spend too much on crafting, but at the same time, you can probably do without, like, Grease Monkey, so it's efficient. Alright, so Physician. Now, I'll note that in this game you're going to get injured. And when you get injured, when you get injured, you're going to basically want to cure, like, your nasty, like, sprains and, like, cure broken limbs, like, as fast as possible, so to speak. And the ability to sort of, like, heal up a lot more as well is a nice thing as well. Now, how valuable is Physician is the thing, right? The thing about Physician is that it basically takes you, like, quite a bit to sort of, like, get to intellect level up to 3 to sort of, like, get, like, the first level for it. And getting Surgeon basically up to level 8 is basically another thing as well. There's basically a heavy cost basically to get, like, this, like, this perk. So, I do like Physician, but at the same time, it's got that cost basically to it, which, like, sort of, like, turns me off from it. If it's basically a little bit easier to sort of, like, use Physician, I wouldn't, like, worry about it too much, but I mean, it's basically one of those things that, like, it's good to have it, but I mean, I'll froze over here, I think. It's like, it's one of the better skills, but at the same time, it's basically also, like, only a laudable skills, I think. Is what I'm sort of getting after here. Alright, on to the next one, which is going to be mining. And I'm pretty sure this is Mother Lode. Nope, Mother Lode's the other one. This is Miner 69. Alright, so, Miner 69 is basically, like, one of the best skills to get in this game. Because you're going to probably do mining at some point, and even if you aren't going to, like, mine, like, rocks and stuff like that, you can, like, use it to just, like, knock down, like, doors and stuff like that in, like, a POI. So, you're going to be using, like, tools at some point in your game. Being able to get, like, access to, like, the art of mining is, like, it's there, is best I can basically say. Like, you get the small chance to get, like, rare gems from ores, basically, like, harvest from ore while busting coffee. You can craft down tip blades, stuff like that. Craft the blackstrap stuff. Craft basic resources into ore, into combat slacks. 50% less damage from collapsing mines. I mean, it's basically like a lot of, like, very interesting stuff, I guess, but I mean, the real thing about, like, mine 69 is basically, like, this stuff right here. Basically, it is, like, you get, like, more, like, tool damage of, like, your, like, tools, and more block damage of, like, your axe, pick, shovel, chainsaw, or auger, so you basically do a lot more damage to your tools as well. And it's very easy to get, like, strength level 3 to sort of get, like, these, like, initial, like, levels right here if you want to sort of, like, make use of them. And I'm basically in my game right now. I haven't got, like, any sort of, like, mining, like, skill points in my character. And I'm not really finding a whole lot of, like, tool-based, like, skills, so to speak. Or, like, tool-based, like, perk books, by the way. Which basically means I'm not really, like, specializing very well in tools. So you probably want to get at least some minus 69 at some point of your character. I don't think it's basically, like, the, like, primary thing I want to basically get, but, it's basically around here of, like, the workshops, I think. So this is for up there and excellent, because it is an excellent skill to sort of get for sure. Alright, Pack Mule. I'm not going to waste your time. It's just terrible. Now, I feel really bad about putting Pack Mule basically down here in terrible, because this is really a skill that really should be a lot, like, more buff than it really basically is. All it really basically does for you, basically Pack Mule right here, it basically lets you, like, carry more items basically for, like, level. So you basically carry free, carry additional free, carry additional free, and they carry additional, like, 4 and, like, 4, and, that's basically all it basically does. And this can all be sort of like, sort of like, you don't really have to worry about basically, like, how fast you're basically going with, like, increments and stuff like that, or, like, the cost basically. So it's basically one of these things where, like, Pack Mule, it feels like it could have been a lot better than it basically currently is. Like, maybe, like, when you're basically overweight, basically, like, ignore, like, those costs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's terrible. So don't ever get Pack Mule. It's just, like, not great. Alright, Mother Lode. So, Mother Lode. The whole idea of this one is you basically get more resources from like, mining or like, chopping out trees and stuff like that. And if you basically want to like do any sort of mining, then like, this will basically help early on to sort of like, get your resources that you'll need. Later on, it's not that useful, I don't think, because, you get like the auger and basically like, you'll basically get so much like, resources basically for like mining and stuff like that with an auger, or the chainsaw will basically like chop down stuff really fast anyways, but it's not like a terrible skill. It's not like, it's not like, excellent like this, but it's not a terrible skill either. It's just sort of mediocre. Yeah, that's where I want to say it. It's mediocre. Let's throw it right there. Alright, parkour. And again, I'm not going to waste your time. F, fantastic. So, what is parkour? Before I basically sort of like, skip over it. Whoops. Parkour is basically an ability here in the agility tree. And you basically get with like, agility levels 1, 4, 6, and 8. And the whole idea of like parkour is that you can basically jump higher with like, your second level of it. Like, you can basically jump from the 2 meters to like, 3 meters. And you basically get like, 4, agility levels basically here and get like, parkour master. You can jump like, an extra 2 meters higher. So basically like, 2 meters higher basically lets you jump like, 4 meters, which is just a huge like, amount of jump speed. And I'll note basically like this actually breaks some POIs because you actually sort of jump over walls and stuff like that, but that's just how it goes. It's also nice because you also get like, never get broken leg when falling at like adrenaline junkie free. Never get sprained or broken leg at like, parkour master. You also get like, reduced stamina cost for jumping and reduce and get increased like safe fall distance like, for each like, level you basically get here. So basically like you increase your safe falling distance by 1, 2, 4, and finally 5. So there's some really nice stuff basically get from like, parkour. And a lot of people will actually say like, agility's like the best tree because it has parkour basically in it, because like that's fantastical. So, fantastic. That's where it belongs, that's where it's gonna go. Alright, we got ourselves a perception trait skill here. Infiltrator. Now, it used to be in the olden days that Infiltrator was a pretty powerful ability because it would let you basically like, avoid loose board traps and landmines like easily. And on the way, another view basically into like the wasteland, landmine traps were basically like, come basically all over the place. Like they naturally basically spawn all over the place to sort of like, step on and get blown up by. Now, I think they're basically sort of gone at this point, so this isn't as like useful basically anymore, but it was basically a legacy, like sort of like, perk that was basically very useful back in the day. Now it's not really so useful, so you probably shouldn't really basically borrow it, but I mean, it's down here for most part. And we'll throw it basically ahead of Huntsman because it does have some use basically if you want to basically avoid like floorboard traps and stuff like that, but it's still terrible otherwise. Alright, the Penetrator. So, you find weak spots in target's armor and can use AP rifle bullets to shoot through multiple organic targets. So, it basically does what it says on the 10. Basically, you can use your rifles to sort of like, shoot through like blocks basically, just to like, hit our targets. You can shoot like through multiple enemies, which is basically just like, battles in hordes. You basically ignore like more damage reduction basically when you basically fire like, soldier zombies, for example. So, there's some really nice thing to basically get with like the Penetrator if you're basically into like sniping and stuff like that. Or if you want to basically deal with like the high damage like targets and stuff like that, because reduce like 50% of anything with target armor reduction is just like, awesome for the most part. I don't consider it to be like, a must-have like early on, by the way, though, is a thing, so it's probably like only like down here and like excellent, but I mean, well, it's probably more laudable than that, but I mean, it's basically like, it's one of the better skills again, but I mean, it's like more like the top, notch skill, so to speak, here. Alright, handguns. That's down here in agility again, so Gunslinger. Now, I'll note that gunslingers are basically not just pistols. They're also revolvers, as well as like the SMG, like, 5 or 9, whatever it's basically called. And I'll note that basically, like, I'm basically using like the agility, like, character right now, and using like, the pistols and stuff like that. Pistols are very common find in this game. You'll basically find like sometimes in toilets, or like, you'll find basically like, just them hanging around like other areas as well. And the whole idea of like, the pistol is that like, it's basically like your go-to like, early like, handgun sort of like weapon to sort of make use of. Now, the real thing about, like, handguns, by the way, you'll basically get, like, this, like, critical damage where basically you do 4 successful hits in a short time. Cause, like, the last shot to basically do extra damage is basically nice. Or, like, free shots, basically, if you get, like, Gunslinger. 5, basically, like, this, like, Sheriff. That's basically, like, pistols, basically, here. The more, like, you have to basically hit stuff with, like, your shots, the more, like, damage you're basically gonna do. Now, note by this is, like, not that great with, like, laggy type of games, but, if you're basically playing a single player, it's basically awesome. Alright, now, Magnum Enforcer. I should probably just go do that as well as Pistol Pete. So, note that, like, we get, like, not one, but 2 perk points, basically, for this one. So, if you get, like, Magnum Enforcer right here, this basically lets you get, like, better, like, with, like, your Magnum. So, you do more damage with, like, .44 guns. You take 5 less damage when wearing a suit. So that's really great if you want to, like, use, like, the Enforcer, like, armor vibe in this game. The last shot in a chamber does double damage. Barter with a Magnum drawn gives you 5% better deal. You basically craft, like, .44 Magnum animation, like, for your Magnums. You can craft high power ones. Sprinting with a .44 gun in combat uses, like, 20% less stamina. And all shots with a .44 penetrate enemies, bulk craft, like, ammo. So, basically, there's some really nice stuff to get like, Magnum Enforcer here. And on top of that, you also have access to, like, the other one here as well, Pistol Pete. So, with this one, you basically get benefits to, like, your 9mm and, like, your SMGs and stuff like that. So, 9mm weapons have 20% more range when sighted. So each successful leg shot increases, like, chance to cripple. More accurate when rapid firing, like, 9mm weapons. Pistols and SMGs degrade, like, slower. You can craft, like, your high power, like, 9mm, and craft, like, AP 9mm. You inflict more damage with 9mm, and then, like, shots fired at point blank range and basically ignore armor. So, there's some, like, really nice stuff to get with pistols if, like, you get, like, the books here and stuff like that. Now, the only really bad thing about, like, pistols is that even though they're, like, a go-to weapon, it has, like, a lot of, like, use basically early on. Later on, I find it sort of fall off compared to, like, other weapons you might want to use. Like, if you basically have, like, say, like, an auto shotgun, you're just gonna, like, blow away enemies, like, immediately, basically, if they get in front of you. Rather than, like, having, like, get up to your face with a pistol and, like, hit your, like, benefits of shooting with that. And at the same time, basically, if you get, like, rifles, basically, they'll have, like, our benefits as well, like, ignoring armor. So, the thing about, like, pistols is they are very nice weapons, but I mean, they're still like a jack-of-all trades sort of weapon, which means they're masters of none. Which can be useful if you're basically playing by yourself, but, outside of that, not really sure. They're not a bad weapon for sure, but I mean, they're still, like, in the pack, like, in the middle, so to speak, here, so, let's just throw them right there in, like, the middle. That's basically where they're going to be. Laudable. Alright, recycling. So, Salvage Operations. Now, Salvage Operations has, like, a perk book. And this is actually very much important to sort of, like, check out because you're probably not going to get Salvage Operations so much for, like, the ability to salvage, but rather for his book. Wasteland Treasures. Now, I'll note the first thing about, like, Wasteland Treasures is that you basically get honey here. And when you basically get, like, Volume 1, you have a small chance of getting, like, honey from, like, trees basically you harvest. So, if you're a lumberjack, you're going to have, like, massive amounts of, like, honey basically generated if you have his book. There's also some other nice stuff you basically get from him as well. So, you basically harvest, like, columns for bones, jewelry, and precious gems. So, you basically get more money. If you have, like, a problem with acid, basically find that, there's a chance to, like, harvest it from cars. You can basically purify pure mineral water, the chastest water in a wasteland. So, that's basically, like, the best, like, sort of thing to drink if you want to have, like, water basically on hand. You can harvest brass from more stores. You can learn to weave plant fibers into cloth. Harvest lead from, like, sinks and stuff like that. And, eventually you can basically find more legendary parts. This definitely, the volume is basically good for, like, finding stuff that you may have, like, or have on hand for later on. So, Salvage Operations basically is, like, very useful for a book. Now, salvaging itself is basically not, like, the most important thing we used to have, but I mean, it's not, like, a bad idea to sort of have this stuff as well. In many ways, just, like, the salvaging, like, aspect of the skill is more like the cherry on top, so to speak. And I never really have, like, that much, like, stamina problems basically with my characters, but I mean, it's there, I guess, to sort of, like, help you out. Where do I want to throw you as a thing? Probably down here with, like, Lucky Looter, I think. Because, again, it's another level skill. Alright, down to Constitution, or again, Fortitude. Pain Tolerance. Now, I've gone through this game with, like, high pain tolerance or low pain tolerance. And pain tolerance is a very, like, powerful skill because it basically lets you get, like, less chance of being stunned and reduces the amount of, like, HP loss basically being hit. And obviously when you're basically being hit, it's bad. You don't want to basically die. So this helps you avoid dying. Now, I know, by the way, this is not really, like, not important for basically avoiding hits because, you're basically using, like, a ranged weapon, which is basically important to say, Horde Knight, where, like, you basically want to gun down the enemies rather than, like, being in their face. And if you're basically, like, going through POIs, basically using weapons drawn, then, like, it's not that useful either. But I mean, if you're using, like, a lot of, like, melee weapons like I usually do, this is a very valuable skill to sort of have. So I very much enjoy having a skill based around when I basically, like, decide to go, like, ham on enemies basically in melee. So what can I say about pain tolerance? This is definitely an excellent skill. So I'll throw it in excellent, because that's where it's going to go. Alright, run and gun. That's going to be the next one. And one, I'm just going to take a drink of water here. Alright, run and gun. Now, I'm not bothered if you're like a, sort of like a ranged user. Run and gun is going to be very useful to you because it basically lets you, like, run around, like, reloading a little bit faster. And it also lets it, gets you improve, like, hip fire. So if you're basically trying not to aim down sights, you're basically going to sort of just, like, mow them down from the hip. If that's not your playstyle, it's not that useful. But I mean, I don't think it's like a terrible, like, skill to sort of have. I don't think it's as good as, like, pain tolerance here or, like, penetrator or anything like that. But I mean, it's still a laudable skill. So let's throw it down here and, like, laudable, because it's good for, like, those who want to basically play the more ranged characters. It's the thing, right? So give it some props basically for that. Now, on the by the way, you don't really need to, like, worry about running gun that much if, like, you have to resort to range as, like, a melee character, or if, like, you're basically in Horde Knight, because you're probably going to be staying still, like, aiming down sights most of the time for, like, those situations. It's basically mostly for those characters that basically like to, like, go through POIs or, like, go through, like, normal, like, zombie, like, raids and stuff like that. But whatever. Alright, now we get to stealth from the shadows. Now, unfortunately for stealth in this game, it has this problem being debuffed by the developers. I'll note that basically, like, this, like, this, like, like, tier list is basically being, like, made for, like, version, like, 1.0. And I'll note basically, like, stealth was basically a little more powerful in the first version, but recently, like, version 1.1, they actually changed this so that, there's basically a stealth meter. And what the stealth meter basically does is, if you basically have, like, the flashlight on, or if you basically, like, move around, it basically, like, ups your ability to be detected by enemies. And it's very easy for, like, enemies to sort of detect you if you basically have, like, like, no stealth gear basically on. You're basically doing unstealthy things like run around or, like, not crouch walking and stuff like that. This sort of helps, like, combat it. But I mean, here's the thing about, like, stealth in this game. It's only useful to basically solo, like, solo play for the most part, because you're basically trying to do it with, like, friends, and, like, your friends might, like, alert enemies, and then, you're both detected as a result of that. And even though, like, it makes you, like, sneak more effectively and, like, move a little bit faster, and it makes, like, lose sight of you a little faster, it feels like it very much like, it's a skill that basically, like, isn't really that needed, so to speak. It's not like it's terrible or anything like that. Like, if you play solo, then you can actually make use of it for sure, but it's deficient to say the least. Because, like, the stealth isn't, this doesn't, like, the stealth system in this game is, like, not that great for stealthing, so not that great. Alright, so we're moving on to boomsticks. That's what that is right there. Now, boomsticks basically cover shotguns, and early on, shotguns are very, very weak. But once you get access to, like, your, like, pump shotgun or the auto shotgun, they aren't weak anymore. Compared to, like, say, like, the machine gun, the gunslinger, and, like, the archery, I consider this to be, like, a very much, like, another late bloomer, so to speak. But it's definitely, like, something that basically serves you very well in the late game for sure. And for that purpose, I'm going to throw it basically into excellent, because once you basically get, like, well, so I don't want to throw it into excellent. You know what? I'm going to throw this basically down here for like the pistol. The thing about like the boomstick, it's got such a weak like early game that like you're probably going to use like say a pistol basically over it, even if you have like specs basically into like using shotguns. But once you basically get access to those like end game like sort of shotguns, the like pump and the auto, these things will just rip apart like how effective basically these early guns basically are, so to speak. Like it won't be as good as like the machine gun, like the pump shotgun, like in game or like early game. But I mean, if they get right up close to you, like the shotgun, it'll just like plow away enemies like real quickly. It also has the ability to sort of stun enemies as well. Maybe to use this as well, so that's nice as well. Disarmer is like nice too. Crippling enemies is nice as well. And of course, my like heads up went off for one last time here, but that's fine. All right, so back to stealth here. Hidden strike. Now, unlike with like the from the shadow skill, hidden strike is a little bit different in like how it's like useless shadow sort of applies. Not only do you get access to like early combat, which is basically a thing I don't think front of shadow basically gives you. Yeah, this basically gives you like Night Stalker, which is like just sort of for out here so you can actually see it. The Night Stalker. This basically lets you like do some stuff like sneak better at night, blade weapons do more damage at night, more sneak damage at night, bows do more damage at night. Basically, like it helps you really sort of do stuff at night. And another thing about Night Stalker, the only nice thing really gets like this never encounter at night basically sort of thing, because that's really nice basically to have. Like you're basically like lugging around a whole lot of loot. But yeah, it's like it could be better. But anyways, hidden strike. Let's just look at urban combat here a little bit better. So on the base, I don't think much like the stealth like front of shadows like skill, but this right here, urban combat. So urban combat basically gives you a couple of nice things like stealth boots mod. So you can put this basically on if you want to basically go for stealth. Basically make you more stealth if you want. Cigars. I mean, what's not to love about like being able to like boost your barring by like 10% or get the afternoon strength? So not bad. Sneak over traps makes no sound. That's very useful for like sneaking around if you want. Landing while jumping is basically useful because you basically like make no sound. So that's actually very useful for like sneaking like if you're going to do stuff at all. Landmines won't detonate when stepped on. This is just like godly if you basically run into landmines. Armor doesn't slow you down when in combat, so I mean, awesome. Take 5% less damage and deal 10% more damage when indoors, so great for POIs. Silencers have no damage penalty, so again, just that's just awesome. So yeah, hidden strike basically. Hidden strike is basically a little bit better than like from the shadows because it has that like nice perk, which basically really like, helps you out. But more importantly, it basically helps you out with like the amount of damage basically you do here. So if you're using like say like pistols or like shotguns and stuff like that, they're not the greatest for like sneak attacks. But if you do actually do sneak attacks with them, and you like you don't really have to get too close to use them, you're gonna get some like nice piling damage with like hidden strike here version of as well. So unlike like into the shadows, this is like not like a bad ability to sort of have for like its perk book and stuff like that. So where to throw it? I think I'm gonna throw it basically like just above like it in mediocre, but I mean it's basically a lot better basically compared to like this one right here, so not bad. Alright, that one looks to be like the rifle one, Deadeye. So now on the way in this game, a lot of people really like look down on rifles because they're like very slow to sort of fire. And once you basically get up to like the lever action rifle and like the sniper rifle, you'll basically have a magazine size. But early on with like the hunting rifle or like the pipe rifle, you're like limited down to like one like bullet, so to speak. But the idea of like hunting rifles is that later on they can basically use to sort of penetrate through multiple like units, and if you basically get like a kill streak, you can basically get like increased damage by like a lot as well. So it's actually not that bad of a skill if you actually like sort of get like Deadeye later on. But early on a game like you're not really going to be using it for like killing zombies that much, I don't think. So it's like sort of like down here for like the Brawler and stuff like that. So it's basically around like down here and sort of its use. All right, we're running out of skills to do, but next is spears. So Spearmaster. Now I'm a big fan of spears because they basically have the longest range in the game. And they basically also have, like, penetration if you basically get, like, the penetrator. So, yes, you actually use, like, just to sort of like target for, like, armor and stuff like that. The real problem, like, the spears, though, they can only attack, like, one like, enemy at a time, so to speak, because they just sort of go poke as opposed to slash. Now, there's some nice stuff basically used for, like, these as well, because you basically get access to, like, the perk book, Spear Hunter. And you also basically do, like, more damage, like, with your power attacks as well. So if you want to basically, like, sort of focus on, like, 1v1, you do a lot of damage, like, with spears for sure. Alright, the Spearmaster. Or Spear Hunter, rather. So, on the with the Spear Hunter, this makes, like, the spears a lot more, like, better sort of use. Basically, you can use it to sort of, like, do more damage, to get slower. Chance to basically cause bleeding damage, which basically means you let them bleed a little bit. Your power attacks do, like, do more damage to dart down targets. That's basically useful to basically knock them down. So, spears basically pair well with, like, clubs, for example, or, like, batons, because once basically knocked down, you can basically sort of, like, just finish them off with a spear jab. Fast is always useful. Penetrating multiple enemies is very useful. Scoring quick succession, hits basically does more damage, and kills with spear refill your stamina. So there's some really nice basic stuff that have, like, the Spearmaster for sure. Do I think that's as good as, like, the Sledgehammer, though, is a thing, right? I mean, Sledgehammer basically lets you, like, do a lot of stuff at a little bit less range, but I mean, it's still, like, very powerful. I'll say it's probably excellent to spear, but I mean, it's not, like, basically up to, like, the rank base of these things up here for what they basically do. Alright, so, Leaky Gut. Iron Gut. Alright, so, another big part of, like, Iron Gut basically here. The whole idea of, like, Iron Gut is that basically, like, it reduces, like, your food and water consumption, so, you basically, like, don't have to worry about, like, your sanitation or, your hydration level, so to speak, of your character. And it basically holds your breath a little bit faster and, like, have, like, reduced chance of dysentery, basically. Now, we're just basically, like, you might feel, like, let's look at it just by way. If you just look at this, like, everything, like, from here basically on, you probably think to yourself, F. But that's basically not where, like, this, like, skill basically sort of, like, lies in its, like, ability to sort of do stuff. It's basically this last little ability right here. Buffs from consumables last 10% longer. Now, this isn't, like, anything, like, really great, but I mean, the ability to sort of, like, have, like, buffs basically last longer means, like, you benefit more from, say, like, food, or from, like, say, like, medicine and stuff like that. And that can have a, like, a big, like, propensity, so, like, up to, like, I believe his skills a little bit. Basically, say, like, vitamins, for example. I usually forget to basically take vitamins, basically, like, in my fights for the most part. But if you did, you basically have, like, longer, like, buff times for, like, your vitamins, so you basically can get through the POI a little bit better. So, it's basically one of these skills that, like, it's basically down here deficient, but I mean, it's not, like, the worst skill basically on, like, hands, so it's not D's, but I mean, it's, it's basically down there for the most part for what it basically does. Alright, legacy skill. Well insulated. I'm not going to waste your time. It is another F skill. Now, well insulated used to have a purpose by the way in this game. Basically, there used to be, like, hot and cold temperature settings for your characters, where if you weren't wearing clothes, you basically, like, sort of freeze and stuff like that. That was sort of, like, lessen or remove them from the game, so to speak, so it's not really, like, that much of an issue anymore. But, basically, it used to be, like, you suffer from, like, sweltering, freezing, hyperthermia, stuff like that, and this basically helps sort of combat that a little bit, so to speak. But now, basically, at this point, it's not really needed, so to speak, so this is another terrible skill, but, it's there. Animal tracking. Animal tracker. So, animal tracking basically lets you, like, crouch down and basically find, like, tracks of animals. At the first level, you basically get to see, like, rabbits, snakes, chickens. Second level, you basically get, like, boars, deers, wolves, coyotes. And then at level, like, 7, you basically get, like, mountain lions and, like, bears. In many ways, animal tracker sounds like a very cool idea, but I mean, animals are so plentiful in this game anyway, so to speak, so they're really not that great. It's basically down here, basically, like, animal tracker, because it's basically one of these skills that, like, you might want to get if you want to basically get, like, the challenges done, but I mean, it's, like, not really that great basically outside of that, so to speak. Alright, Treasure Hunter and, you know, the one for, like, you know, intellect. So let's just go like this, and I'm going to go down here. I'm just going to quickly get, like, you know, Robotics Inventor. And I guess they put, like, you know, all these, like, you know, batons basically in their own, like, you know, fields, so all I can really say about that, that's fine, I guess. They basically all do the same thing, so, you know, basically increase, like, your attack speed of, like, you know, a certain weapon type by, like, fixed amount, so to speak. Alright, Treasure Hunter. Now, a lot of people will say that Treasure Hunter is basically not a great skill. And it's part of the reason is because, like, you know, unless you're going to do, like, a lot of, like, digging quests, or if you're going to do, like, you know, buried treasure, it's not really that useful basically outside of that. And even for the rewards basically in buried treasure, it's not that great either. So, I have to sort of agree with that. Basically, it's basically one of these, like, sort of deficient skills. But it's not terrible, so to speak, down to, like, you know, the level basically you shouldn't get. I can actually see, like, players actually, like, you know, sort of like having, like, a, you know, in a cooperative party, someone getting, like, Treasure Hunter, just, like, actually, like, you know, pick up treasure a little faster. Essentially, like, you know, being able to pick up treasure faster just means you can basically, like, you know, have someone basically go out in the world basically getting all the treasure maps and stuff like that if, like, you play cooperatively. So it has a purpose. It's just not a really great purpose. And then Robotics Inventor. So on the basically in this game, I don't really, like, you know, deal with, like, you know, robotics that much. I mean, it's not really, like, you know, meshing with my like sort of sense of, like, you know, a zombie sort of VM game, but, you know, basically just lets you, like, do more damage, like, robotic weapons. You basically deploy, like, multiple robots to, like, sort of do stuff. And you basically get, like, access to tech plants, so, you know, tech plant basically lets you, like, you know, build up your stuff here. So, you know, pipe batons, stuff like that. What's nice about, like, Robotics Inventors here, basically, is that, like, it pairs very well with, like, you know, batons, I guess. You want to basically get your weapons basically up faster. And if you do, like, use robots to actually do stuff, there's a lot of, like, value basically in doing so. Basically, I noticed that, like, you know, batons are basically sort of a weak weapon, but this, like, sort of, like, makes this a little bit better because you can sort of, like, take a baton and have, like, take this, like, you know, skill as well. And basically have, like, a robot sort of, like, you know, attack enemies basically, like, you know, automatically for you while you basically sort of, like, knock them down for the robot to sort of, like, you know, just kill. And on the way as well, like, if you get this, like, skill, you basically get, like, you know, more range basically for your weapons as well. So that's nice too. Where to rank this one, I guess. I don't really think much robots, but I mean, I acknowledge how powerful they can be, sort of like, you know, in combat. So I feel let's roll it right there. All right, let's just sort of, like, you know, sort of, like, you know, shrink this down a little bit because I could probably, like, you know, put a couple more things here in Fantastic. So we'll do that perhaps. That feels fine basically for, you know, those things right there. Let's roll Penetrator right here. Position could be, like, you know, lobbable, I guess, so let's throw that right there. Cardio could go right here. You know, this seems like a fairly, like, you know, good meshing of, like, you know, stuff, I guess. I kind of like medium arm being all the way down here, though. I mean, it's like, I got Lord in, like, you know, the stealth one of all things, so let's throw that right there, maybe. Throw this right here. Throw that right there. Now let's just move this up a little bit. Yeah, it's basically, like, you know, a fairly good, like, sort of showing of, like, where I basically sort of think basically everything is here. This seems a little bit high. That's a roll right there, I think. Alright, well, there's basically my tier list basically for, like, you know, the skills basically in, like, you know, 7 Days to Die. So, I mean, there's some skills basically I, like, you know, would probably recommend as, like, you know, just must have, like, say, parkour, cardio, you know, the workstation, minor 69, paid tolerance, penetrator, physician. Others basically should avoid, like, you know, down here. Hope you guys basically enjoyed my little, like, you know, tier list making for this, like, you know, game, and, you know, maybe I'll find something useful from it. So, take care.